65 toss power trap. That might pop wide open, Rats.
Kansas City Chiefs absolutely phenomenal.
Welcome back in, everybody, to another great episode of the TBT podcast as we roll along this 2023 season. Back with it, as always, my man, Zach. Zach, what's going on?
I'm just ready for playoff football, man. That's it.
Right? That's mostly what we're going to get into today, playoff football. This is kind of just like the backup bowl. I feel like from now and probably till like a win-in-your-end type situation game for Mahomes, this is kind of what it's going to be. Like Week 18 is kind of going to be like the backup bowl, where you're going to kind of have where it's just going to be your Blaine Gabberts, like the Chad Henne Bowl. You're going to kind of have that like every year, where you just kind of have your backup come in and play. But those are always fun. These are morale games. That's really what we're going to get into. This is a morale game when, like, you want your guys to go out here this game versus the Chargers, and like you just want those little guys that don't play to just get their touches, get their touchdown. So, you know, kind of how you have that atmosphere at the end of that Bengals game, where people are jumping around and dancing and that type of just, you know, brotherhood at the end of the game. So this is a big game just for morale sense. And then there's some milestones, you know, we can get into from some other players, which they may get. We'll see if Andy Reid will let them get some of those milestones. But yeah, what are some of your thoughts going into this Chargers game? I know it's kind of weird. Again, it's the Blaine Gabbert show this weekend. No Patrick Mahomes, if you guys didn't hear. No Mahomes. So what are you kind of just looking for in this game?
Yeah, I like these games because a bad game will not really damage the team morale because it's not most of our starters playing, and we don't need to win to get a specific seed or anything like that or to win the division. But a win could boost the morale of so many different players if they play well, because the players like respond regardless of if the game has any implications. They respond to when they play well. If they lose, Mahomes not tripping because we would have put him in the game if we were tripping about it. And so I'm really just excited to be able to see some of the players we don't get to see as often, see how the offense looks, like in case some of our guys were to go down. And hopefully our guys that do play can get their milestones, like the 1,000-yard guys and all that.
Yeah, and I really think that's what it is. We don't obviously want to pull the Chargers of last year of like putting in all your starters and all of a sudden it's like they all get hurt. There are some guys you do kind of want to get to see them get their milestone. So like you want to see Chris Jones obviously get that 10 sacks, to keep, you know, just him happy. You want to see Travis Kelce get those 16 yards. He doesn't have to play the whole game to get 16 yards. You can literally run a screen and he'll get 10 yards. You run another little play here and he'll get 10 yards. That's 20 yards right there. He's got his 1,000 yards. And you may guys think, oh, that's stupid. What if he gets hurt? What if he blows a knee? I mean, if that's what the mindset you're going in, I know obviously you don't want to play a guy unless you absolutely have to. But if that's your mindset going in, then like you probably shouldn't be playing football in general. But I do think I would, you know, you want to see these guys in milestones, and I've seen a lot of Chiefs fans being like, who cares? These guys don't really care about those things. They do, but they don't. They like to see when they open up in 5 or 6 years, when they open up their stats and he sees 1,000 yards 9 straight times, and he has a chance to get 10 times in a row. That's a big deal to him. And he's only 16 yards away. It's not like he's 100. He's 16. He needs 16 yards. So that's important for him. If he runs 20 yards down the field and turns around and catches the pass, he's out of the game. He's done.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Blaine Gabbert, he's been a starter in this league. He's been in the league for 12 years now. He can get Travis Kelce that many yards. Now, Pacheco and Rice. I know we kind of talked about it before. That's 60 yards and 62 yards, if I'm not mistaken. That's a little bit different. In one, we know how Pacheco runs. There's no off switch. There's no like, okay, Pacheco, just get your 62 calmly. Like, we know that man's going to want to be like, no, I have to run through everyone if I'm going to get 62 yards. So that's one I'm kind of like a little bit cautious on. But I would like to see, Rice out there just because he's a younger player, still just get him some reps, ready to go in the playoffs. But Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and Rice, I'd like to see out there. Pacheco, I know, again, he's a powerful runner and he doesn't really have an off switch.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about Rice because I mean that's a lot of yards to get with Blaine Gabbert, and
Mhm.
he is arguably at this point like second or third most important offensive player, and he's our only wide receiver that does anything. And so I'm not like it's cool he's a rookie, get 1,000 yards, but I'm like I would rather him just play like a drive or two. Kelsey, you know he's gonna. I mean, it's the Chargers. What team out of all teams in the NFL does the worst against Travis Kelsey? It's the Chargers.
Right.
Unless Derwin James is like Derwin James a couple years ago was tough against him, but the game against them earlier in the year, there was 3 plays where Travis Kelsey was just wide open with no one even near him, and
Mhm.
that's been what we've been missing this season. But we get against the Chargers, and then Pacheco. I mean, I would rather Pacheco play more than Rice just because it's a lot easier for a running back to get like 60 yards. Like that's really nothing. But
Yeah, and he can get it. I'm not going to say that right or Pacheco or any of these guys can't get it versus the Chargers defense. I mean, the Chargers defense has been horrible, and those guys are going to be thinking about Cancun. They're thinking about Mexico. They're thinking about where they're going to go on vacation. A lot of those guys, because they can't really spoil the Chiefs season. You know, you may have some guys out there playing for a contract next year, but you know, you also have Blaine Gabbert, he is on a 1 year deal. He wants to stick around this league. You could even see a guy like Chris, our third string quarterback, Chris Oladukin. If he gets in the game, he wants to get another contract. So you could see those guys that if they get up in the game, they're playing for contracts. There's going to be Deneric Prince. I mean, you have Jerick McKinnon's hurt, Clyde's hurt or ill. So you may have to run Pacheco out there, but you're going to have Jamichael Pirine, yeah,
LaMichael, yeah.
Michael Pirine, and you're gonna have Demaric Prince out there. Like you're gonna have to. So those guys are sitting there. They're like, we got to play for a contract. So they're going to be out there, and that's what's going to be showing depth. You never know what you could kind of find. But the interesting one people are not talking about is Ross, not John Ross. I
Yeah.
almost said John Ross, but Ross, Justin
Yeah.
Ross. That's what I'm interested in. Is a guy where we couldn't really see him last year because he was hurt. And this year he's had, the legal stuff and some off the field stuff. But now he's kind of back. This is where I would love to just see Blaine Gabbert just find him just all game long. Just be like, what do we have in this guy? If he can play well with Blaine Gabbert, what can he do with Patrick Mahomes? And I've seen a lot of reports from different sources, people within the Chiefs media saying that Ross is a guy that could potentially get a lot of reps this postseason just because really right now they're kind of just they don't know what they have in MVS. They don't know what they have in Kadarius Toney. Hardman's a guy I've seen a lot where they're saying they want to get him back healthy, and that's why they activated the last game to get kind of acclimated. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these guys, and this is why I think this game is important. If you can get Hardman out there getting reps, if you can kind of get these guys who like MVS, people are like, "Oh, rest MVS." No, why? He
Yeah,
needs
he's
to
not.
get his mojo. If the Chiefs go out there and they're like, you know what, Blaine, you're able to just fire away. Derek Prince and those guys just get open receiving the ball, but you're able to just fire. We don't care if you throw 5 interceptions. Just go. Just get these guys their confidence. That's what my goal would be going into this game versus the Chargers. Just rip the piss out of the ball.
Yeah,
Like,
and it feels like a preseason game. Like I'm just excited to see guys that don't normally get reps. Like that's how I felt in the preseason watching Rice and Justin Ross, was just like, what can these guys do with a bunch of different quarterbacks throwing the ball a bunch? And so I'm really excited. But one thing I had thought about is the fact that every single year it seems like we get scheduled with Los Angeles last week because NFL thinks it's going to be like for the division, for the 1 seed, and then it's just never it ends up being anything.
yeah, it always is. I remember a couple of years ago, Chad Henne came in and played pretty well versus the Chargers. And that was really kind of the only game the Chiefs lost. I mean, they lost the game with the Raiders that year, but that was a great year, 2020. They came in and Chad Henne played well, but they ended up ultimately losing. But it didn't really matter just because, again, you had a lot of backups in. But yeah, I do think that we had a couple of years ago in 2017, Patrick Mahomes came in and he played as a rookie. They did not have to play Kareem Hunt, but he needed 17 yards to become the rushing lead. What did they do? They gave him the ball, and they were like, "You're gonna break the season record." Obviously, Travis Kelsey, the most 1,000-yard seasons for a tight end in a row was like 5 or 4. I think it may have been even like 3 4 or
I think
something
it
like
was
that.
3 because I remember when he got 4, it was like a huge deal.
Yeah, 3, and that
Yeah.
was in 2017 or 2019-18. He did that. So it's like that was 4 or 5 years ago, and he's just been racking them up. But he has a chance to do what not a lot of receivers do, is get 10 in a row.
Yeah.
I think he's at 9, maybe, or is it 8?
This will be 8, right?
8. So yeah, I mean, again, obviously it's been a little bit of a drop off this season, but I mean, if the man even just has 2 more seasons after this of 1,000 yards, he can kind of just find that fountain of youth and just keep playing well. I mean, he can have what a lot of receivers don't do, is get 10 1,000-yard seasons as a tight end. If a lot of people are saying he doesn't care about those things. Obviously, he wants to be well rested and going into the playoffs, but a guy like Travis Kelce, 16 yards. It's not 50. It's not 40. It's not even 30. He needs 16 freaking yards. Go out there, get the man 16 yards, and get him out of the game. Get him out of the game. Get him as a 1,000-yard milestone. It's just a great thing to have on paper for a guy like Travis Kelce. And those guys, like I said, at the end of the day, they do care about that. Obviously, you want to get the win. And like we said, some of the things that I want to see in this game is just Ross. Just get the ball to Ross. MVS needs to play. MVS 100% needs to play. A lot of people are like, we'll just arrest all the starters, MVS. I'm like, no. Get MVS out there. He's the leader. Like, let's not forget how big he was in the playoffs for us. He was our best receiver in the playoffs. He was. He was our best receiver in the playoffs. He did very well versus Jacksonville. He had a touchdown versus Jacksonville. He had a touchdown versus Cincinnati late in the game. He burnt Cincinnati deep into the game. So he's been a big part of the postseason last year. So that's my goal, is just I really think they have to get just guys going. Just get them that confidence going to the next game. Then you could, go into the next, when you play like a team like the Houston Texans, where we're going to get into that. There's some potential matchups the Kansas City Chiefs could end up playing. As we kind of get into this, and as we talk about the playoffs, Zach, I saw something recently happen in the news as a player got released from a team. That was Frank Clark. I saw Frank Clark is now a free agent. What about the Kansas City Chiefs bringing on Frank Clark for the playoffs?
I'm not. I mean, you got to think about a few things, okay? You need to clear space on the 53-man roster, okay? Then you have to think, will he get snaps? Well, is he better than Karlaftis, Dana, Omenahu, Anudike? Is he better than any of those guys at the current moment? And I'm assuming the answer, he's probably better than Anudike, but he's really young. I'm assuming the answer is really no. He's not going to get snaps over these guys. Unless they really believe like he's a playoff performer, and what he's shown this season with the Broncos, which was only in like 6 games, was not meaningful because he's that good of a playoff performer. And but then there's the aspect where everyone on that line loves playing with him. Obviously, Chris Jones does. And he's also so close to being the all-time leader in playoff sacks. But that's not really a decision. That's not really a factor when you're deciding to bring someone onto the team. That might be a factor when it comes to playing time, like if he was already on the team. But you don't pick up a guy off the street because he's that close to a record. And so if they can find the expendable guy on the roster that will not be meaningful at all in the playoffs, I would do it. But otherwise, I mean, there's really no point because we have the depth of edge now.
Yeah, and like you said, it comes down to would he play? The only thing I would knock back against that is there's regular season Frank Clark, and for some reason there's postseason Frank Clark. Like every time you're like, Frank Clark stinks, this and the other. And at the end of the season, you're like, all right, let's get rid of Frank. And then by the end of the season, going into the offseason, you're like, why does he have to do so good in the postseason? Like he does, 5 or 6 sacks during the regular season. All of a sudden he gets postseason, he has 4 sacks. And it's like, what are you drinking during the postseason where all of a sudden it's just like he just flips a switch? I mean, like you said, like people don't realize he needs a sack to be the all-time leader in sacks in the playoffs. He didn't make the playoffs until he got to Kansas City.
No, that's not true. He was getting sacks in Seattle.
Oh,
Actually.
okay. All right.
Yeah, I think he had 3 in Seattle because 15, 16, and 18 he was with them.
Okay. So maybe he did get some with Seattle, but still, I mean, look what he's done with Kansas City. I can just remember in 2019 what he did. He was the bigger than Chris Jones, because we all know Chris Jones. I think now he may have 2 or 3 sacks in the postseason.
I think he finally got one against Cincinnati.
He got one. He got like 4 versus Cincinnati in that game because he was. absolutely a game record in that game. So he may have a couple now. But before that, that was a big knock for Chris Jones. It was like, y'all don't really have a guy that can get pressure. And I think he kind of broke that last year versus Cincinnati when, he had the one late in game and then the first quarter, Joe Burrow was on his back many times. But yeah, Frank Clark, I mean, he was a huge part of that. We know Chris Jones as soon as, he may not even been released yet from the Seahawks. You had Chris Jones tweeting like, hey, bring in my guy. I don't think it would be a bad idea. Like you said, it all comes down to like, is there someone, you move around where basically he's just kind of a third down pass rusher. That's what, in my eyes, where you would bring him down is just kind of just being a third down pass rusher.
I'm not gonna lie, just with you talking about it, you kind of convinced me. I wanted to sign because imagine how great of a moment that would be if he just gets one sack. Like that's the
Well,
moment of the season there.
I think again when you have, and we also have to look about this like if me and you, right, we're on a team. I leave, I go somewhere else, and I've played with you for years. You kind of we kind of know each other on that defensive line. We kind of know each other plays. All of a sudden you're a free agent. You're going to be like, hey, like bring in my guy. Like I play well with him over there. Like you kind of want to go play with your guy. You see it all the time with Aaron Rodgers. It's like, why does Aaron Rodgers want to why was his, when they had his whole demands list, right? It was like, why does he need Randall Cobb and Mercedes Lewis, who's 35? It's a security blanket. It's comfortability for those guys. When you got Chris Jones over there, he's like, hey, I've won all my Super Bowls with this guy. I know when the back's against the wall, there's another veteran in that room I can count on to get these guys going, get some of these young guys going. So to me, I honestly don't think it's a bad idea, even if you're like, hey, you know what, rotation. We wanted to create pressure. And we all know what Steve Spagnuolo has been able to do with pressure. It's adding another long piece out there on third down, having to get after a guy like Josh Allen. I don't think it's a bad idea. It just logistically would have to work out. I honestly would not be surprised by the end of the week if all of a sudden you saw the Chiefs break news that they're bringing in Frank Clark.
Yeah, that'd be a cool moment. It would sort of be like last year earlier this year when we brought back Hardman, just to like a greater extent.
Yeah, I would like it. I think again, you can never have too many receivers, and you can never have too many pass rushers to get after the ball. But speaking of some of the potential guys you're going to have to go up to, this is where it gets interesting as we talk about just kind of the matchups. And I have one of my playoff predictions up here, and it'll be up there on the screen for you guys to see. It's a scenario where the Buffalo Bills, we kind of talked about it, where there's a scenario where the Kansas City Chiefs don't even have to go up a team like a Buffalo Bills. And you guys may be wondering, why are we talking about the Buffalo Bills? If you guys aren't worried about the Buffalo Bills, why are you talking about the Buffalo Bills? Well, if you look at kind of the playoffs, and a lot of you guys always ask me, all you do is talk about the Bills because you're scared about the Bills. Well, we're really going to only talk about the team the Chiefs only lost to in the playoffs right now. There's only one team. The Kansas City Chiefs went and played in the regular season and lost to, and that was the Buffalo Bills. So you're going to talk about potentially their greatest matchup in the playoffs, which could be the Buffalo Bills. But one of the predictions that could happen is if Buffalo goes and loses on Sunday night in Miami versus the Miami Dolphins. So if that scenario plays out, which I have on my playoff prediction, if Buffalo goes and loses in Jacksonville and the Steelers win, which the Steelers play the Ravens, who are most likely going to be playing their backups, and then you have the Jacksonville Jaguars who are playing the Tennessee Titans. And we talked about this after the podcast a lot. We kind of wanted to just talk about here today is you could have Miami Dolphins at the 2 seed playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you could have the Kansas City Chiefs at the 3 seed playing the Houston Texans, and the Cleveland Browns playing the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'm going to kind of give you my reasons why this matchup can potentially happen. Well, with the Pittsburgh Steelers, they're going to be going up against the Baltimore Ravens, and the Baltimore Ravens are going to be playing their backups. And honestly, if the Ravens lose that game, you have the Steelers in the playoffs. And if the Steelers end up beating the Dolphins in a playoff game, guess who the Ravens have to play in the first round? Pittsburgh Steelers. But again, if the Bills come in and win the game, guess who you potentially have to play in that second round? The Ravens would have to potentially play because they're a lower seed, would be the Buffalo Bills. So that's why I think that the Ravens would want a team like the Steelers in the playoffs. So I know we kind of talked about it. I know you can kind of elaborate on some of the matchups we may have, even if Buffalo gets in, you still would not have to play like a team like the Buffalo Bills in the first round, or maybe even in the second round in the playoffs. I know we kind of talked about it.
Yeah, there's a big difference between what I want to happen and what I think will happen. What I think will
Mm-hmm.
happen is we have Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, Jacksonville, Cleveland, Miami, Houston, which has us playing Miami in the first or in the wild card round. And I'm not so concerned about that as much as I am Buffalo going against Houston, which should be a win, and then us having to go to Buffalo. I feel a lot more confident with the Bills, like we talked about, with the Bills sneaking into the playoffs and going to Miami and beating them a third time, and then them going to Baltimore while we get either Jacksonville, Houston, Indianapolis, or Cleveland, which that's what I want to happen. We talked about it last week. And so I'm really going to be on the edge of my seat all weekend, just like trying for that scenario to fall into place. Because if we can get that 7 seed Buffalo where we can't run into them until the AFC Championship game, nor can we run into Baltimore until the AFC Championship game, that's as good as it gets for us. That works. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean those exactly. That's kind of my point too. Is like this game for Miami. The only thing that's really going for Miami is they're banged up right now. The only thing going for Miami is like you got Tyreek's house on fire, and he may start going for. You got Tyreek's house on fire. They just got blown out. Like there's a lot of built up anger in Miami right now. There's a lot of just like I want to go out there and I just want to beat the brakes off of like the Buffalo Bills. Just like they want to go out there and they want to knock the Bills out of the playoffs. They absolutely want to knock their greatest AFC rival out of the playoffs. And you just have so much bad happening, like players getting hurt. You know, you have all these things happening. And Tyreek Hill's house is on fire. Like everything that could go wrong for the Dolphins is going wrong. That's why, like, as a guy who's a little bit of a betting man, I'm kind of like, there's just so much things going wrong for the Dolphins. I'm almost just like, do I pick the Bills to win this game? Because, and I know it kind of there's some news here, and we talked about it. We're going to be live streaming this Buffalo Bills versus Dolphins game on Sunday night after the Chiefs game. We're going to be talking about the Chiefs game. We're going to be watching live reaction of us watching the Miami Dolphins and Bills game. We're going to be talking about the game, watching the game. It's just a hangout. So that'll be great. That's just basically who's the Chiefs going to match up in the playoffs. But like you said, though, Zach, like this is an AFC where no Chiefs fan should be sitting here being like, shit. Let me rephrase this. Every AFC team should be shaking. None of these teams have played great football. Any one of these teams could lose like that. You name me a team where you go in this game and you say that team is like I would put all my money 100% on those teams. I can't really think of one in every single one of these matchups.
Well, you're excluding Baltimore in this statement, right?
Yeah, well, again, Baltimore's
Okay.
a bot.
Okay, yeah.
Baltimore's a bot. Even again, if Baltimore matches up like a team with Cleveland, that's still a game where they could compete. But outside of Baltimore, let me rephrase that. Outside of Baltimore right now.
There's no one, but I like that you brought up Cleveland because if I'm Baltimore and I see Cleveland in the divisional opponent that has a nasty defense and all of a sudden Joe Flacco's looking like he was on the Ravens, yo, I do not want to see that. If I'm Baltimore, I'd rather a Buffalo or a Miami win because Cleveland plays like this is not the same Cleveland team that we had early in the year. This is arguably the second hottest team in the league right now. And so I'm glad you brought that up. What was your original question?
No. I mean that's really my question. Is like you outside of Baltimore, you don't have a lot of teams where you can sit there and this is kind of what I talk about. You know, a lot of you guys go on my lives and you watch my TikTok. Like this is kind of what I'm talking about is like where it's like, oh, like the Chiefs are gonna go. The Texans could upset the Chiefs. Yeah, like the Browns could go into Baltimore like and upset them. Like, but is it most likely? No. But the Steelers do end up getting that 7th spot. They could go in Miami and upset the Dolphins. None of these teams have played great. You show me a team that even in the last couple of weeks that has played good football. None of them have. None of these AFC teams have played good football. Absolutely not. I will not sit here and say any of these. Even if you want to say Cleveland's kind of they beat the Jets and they beat kind of some teams that they beat Houston, but Houston they didn't have C.J. Stroud, so you got to have that there. The Texans have kind of been up and down too. So you can't really sit there and just go, oh, yeah, like the Chiefs, man, they're on upset alert. Why? Well, they've lost games to Buffalo, and we kind of talked about this before. They had Isaiah Pacheco not play. Drew Tranquil didn't play. Donovan Smith didn't play. Reed went out in the game late in the third quarter. You fumbled the ball at the 50-yard line. You threw an interception at the 45-yard line. You had Kadarius Toney have a foot offsides, and you lost by 4 points. But I am supposed to sit here every week and just be non-biased. And, you have to be so honest and admit that the Chiefs they've been so bad, and they better not see Buffalo in the playoffs. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not. Am I going to sit here and say, yeah, guys have played terrible. Guys haven't caught the ball. And they're still right there on the cuff of winning the game. And if you play that game probably 100 times, the Chiefs come out on top majority of the time, absolutely. That's kind of where I am with this whole playoffs.
Yeah, I feel the same way, but it's not going to be any easy out, even though these teams are underqualified and not very good. Like, because we're struggling as it is. And like we've said all year, we can still make the Super Bowl, but we're kind of forgetting that we're in the same group that we're talking about. We're in this group where it's we haven't looked good.
100%. And that's kind of my point, is where the Chiefs are in that same group of these teams that kind of are, and that's the thing with the Chiefs. But I also have more slack with the Chiefs than I do these other teams. These other teams don't have Patrick Mahomes. These other teams don't have Andy Reid. These other teams don't have some of the defensive players we have. So I can sit here and say, we've been in this dance these last couple of years. So getting to the playoffs, these teams in the fourth quarter, down by 3, these guys haven't been catching the ball this whole time. These guys can look there and been like, gosh darn it, we've been here the last couple of years. This is still the same roster. When they get into the playoffs, all you sometimes need is maybe a game like the Bengals to reflect and look and be like, hey, you know what? Like, we've been here. These other teams like Cleveland, Jacksonville, even Miami, really.
Houston,
Texans damn sure haven't.
Indianapolis, the only team with substantial playoff experience is Buffalo, and Baltimore always is an early exit. So they have probably, how many games does Lamar Jackson have? 3 or maybe 4? Because he missed last year's.
4.
4.
3.
3 playoff games for Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen has a good handful, probably like 6 or 7, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trevor Lawrence has 1. Joe Flacco has some, but And then Miami, last year Tua didn't play. They played Skyler. So Tua doesn't have any. And Houston, CJ Stroud's a rookie. Indianapolis, Gardner Minshew doesn't have any. And so that's our biggest advantage going into the playoffs. That's why you can separate us from those other teams in that aspect, because our entire team is like playoff veterans. Everyone has played, most of the players have played at least 7, 8, 9 playoff games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at, is if you have to go, and it is kind of crazy, as bad as the Chiefs playing, is you have a lot of people, you should know a lot of people, even people in national media, saying, hey, well, the Chiefs have to go play the Colts or Texans in the first round. Do they beat those teams? And it's kind of like, as bad as it's been for the Chiefs, they go and they win versus the Chargers on Sunday. They go 11-6. Their average win total under the Patrick Mahomes era has been 12 wins. They go 11 wins to 12 wins. And it's supposed to be like, we look at this Chiefs team. And I know it's been at times where they've just, as bad as they've been, they've lost most of these games by maybe 3 points, 4 points. They've lost all these games by 3 or 4 points. As bad as it's been, they've lost most of these games by one crucial play. And we're supposed to sit here and be like, this team is going to go in the playoffs and just outplay them. Not where the Chiefs, again, the Chiefs are going to have to do. The Chiefs are basically going to have to replicate what they've done versus Buffalo, Philadelphia, and Green Bay, where you crap the bed for a whole half. Versus a team like the Texans in the first round, saying the Chiefs can't get out of the first round. That's kind of where I'm at. They would have to basically replicate turnovers, drop passes, and boneheaded mistakes in one game in this first round versus a team like the Houston Texans. Maybe not versus a team like the Bills. Even the Bills, you ended up being by 4, and they had some of the similar things I just named. But yeah, you would have to basically have where the Chiefs just continue some of the mistakes they had. But I really think if they just kind of replicate the game they had versus the Bengals, run the ball, play good defense, get the ball to number 4, and you'll be okay. Is there any playoff prediction that you've kind of seen though, Zach, that you're kind of like, this is where I kind of have the playoffs going. This is what I think the Chiefs matches are going to be, because this is really the last time we'll talk before we know who we're going to play. It's the last time we're going to talk as we kind of wrap it up here, as we know who we're going to play. So do you have any final prediction?
I'm really high on now. They're probably gonna run into each other in the division round if it happens. But I'm high on obviously Baltimore and then Cleveland, because Cleveland is just a team that's like they're just hard to beat because they create so many turnovers, and with their quarterback playing well, and they have a really good offensive line and an underrated receiving core and good running backs, decent running backs. And so I'm really high on both of those teams. And then I see the AFC Championship game being us in Baltimore. That's what I see. Just based off of experience. I mean, we might not be playing better than Buffalo as of late, but we have the experience. We're probably going to have the easier road there, considering they have to win to have favorable seating, and they might have to go through Baltimore before we do.
Mhm.
And so I see us versus Baltimore in Baltimore, and I'm not going to say I have us winning that game, but we're the Chiefs. We're no easy out in the
When you
play.
get there, you're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. So is there a team you have the Chiefs going up against in the first round?
Yeah, I think we're playing Miami.
Miami in the
Yeah.
first round in Kansas City. That's an interesting one. You got Tyreek. The Boos are going to come raining down. I like our chance in that. Just the way the Chiefs were able to press and be more physical with Miami. It's going to be a tough one. I don't think you're going to be able to just kind of ride through 90% of the game again, because that's really what they did. It didn't really become a game until the fourth quarter. But you could also look at it like this: if the Chiefs kind of replicate what they did in that first half and they can kind of figure out a way to just literally score a point in the second half, hey, they could end up, having even a better game. And we know that it's that Andy Reid offensive switch, which is I know I don't want to just sit here and be like, yeah, yada, yada, yada. The Chiefs are going to just all of a sudden magically turn on the offense. Not necessarily saying that, but we know there's another level when it comes to the playoffs with Andy Reid's play calling and just how the Chiefs have played literally statistically. If you look at the Chiefs in the postseason, what they've been able to do and what the defense is able to do in the postseason too. Like the defense always, for some reason, like the defensive line just all of a sudden goes another gear too. In that first round, what I want is I want the Houston Texans or the Colts, but I do think it's going to be Miami. I really do. My heart's of heart, I do think it's Miami. But hey, the Bills are not even technically like 100% in. They're not even 100% in right now.
Yeah, and
if
you look at who was playing when we played against them in Frankfurt, they didn't have Achan, which he adds a different level to that offense. But they had Jalen Phillips, who tore his Achilles, I believe.
Yeah, he's
and they
out.
had Bradley Chubb, who tore his
He's
ACL.
out.
We didn't have Nick Bolton. That was the game Tranquil really broke out. And so we beat them without like our arguably second or third best defensive player. And they're missing 2 huge pass rushers from that game. And so I think we definitely have the advantage in that matchup.
Yeah, I like our odds in that matchup. The Chiefs have done well just versus teams that like to get out and pass the ball. Obviously, they got to be able to stop the run game. They did a great job of that last time. But yeah, I think they can beat the Miami Dolphins. I think they can go to either Buffalo and beat the Buffalo Bills in the divisional round. I think that'll be huge for Patrick Mahomes. He's never really played in a road playoff game. But again, that's not even a guarantee you have to go there. But yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. You go to Baltimore, and when you're there, man, anything can happen. But again, like you said earlier, Baltimore is another team where the only kind of iffy about them is the past. You can't really judge this team off of their past, but is their past with the playoffs? But yeah, I think there's a road. I'm not one of those Chiefs fans that think this team is just a one and done team, that this team has no shot at beating the Buffalo Bills or beating the Dolphins in the first round. I like our chances, even though with all the hiccups, they can still get there. Yeah, but guys, we're definitely going to be live for the Buffalo Bills and the Miami Dolphins game on Sunday night. The game is at 8:15, so we'll probably get on there about 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock we'll be on there talking about the Chiefs kind of going over the game, what we saw, what took place, and then just kind of talking, over the game. We'll stay on a smidge after the game to just kind of go off of who will be playing. But yeah, we're going to be streaming the game. We hope to see you guys there. Zach, any last thoughts? Chiefs going to the playoffs. This will be the last time we talk before we know our playoff matchup, before it's the real Chiefs season, baby.
Hey, really just I'm hoping that our guys show out, that we have a little more clarity on who should be getting the most playing time in the playoffs, which this is very late to find that discovery out. Like normally every team has who they're playing, but we still have a little finding to do because of the inconsistency and with Justin Ross missing a lot of time. And so I'm just hoping to see an entertaining game where I can chill out and then enjoy that game at night.
Yeah, it's a game you don't really have to stress out about. It's a game where, again, like I said, you want to see these young guys, but this is a morale game. Let's get, some of the guys that don't get a lot of playing time, some touches, get them some love. Hopefully Blaine Gabbert, we're back here and we're talking about how he threw 6 touchdown passes versus the Chargers, because I hate losing to Chargers. But yeah, make sure you guys, of course, leave a comment below, like and share the live. Let us know what you guys think. Follow us on TikTok. As always, we will see you guys next time for some playoff football on the TPT podcast.